about 2-minute walk from here.
Cool.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, Srimad Bhagavatam, and very interesting first verse that we're covering today. Share my screen. Can you see it? Yes, no, maybe?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So we're reading 10th canto, chapter 48, verse number 5 to 10. And this first verse, whoops. Well, let's see. We can go over the word for word. Sa means she, whose another name is Trivakra, and also Kubja is another name for those who are more familiar with Kubja from Prabhupada's Krishna book. Manjana means by bathing. Alepa means anointing. Dukula, dressing in fine garments. Bhushana, with ornaments. Shrak means garlands. Ganda means perfume. Tambula, betel nuts. Sudha Asava means drinking fragrant liquor. Adibi, and so on. Prasadita, prepared. Atma, her body. Upasasara, she approached. Madhavam, Lord Krishna. Sakrita, shy. Leela, we know that word, playful. Utsmita, of her smiles. Smita often means smiles, right? Smita Krishna Maharaj, you may know him. Vibhrama, exhibiting the allurement, and Ikshitai, with glances. So, Trivakra prepared herself by bathing, anointing her body, and dressing in fine garments, by putting on jewelry, garlands, and perfumes, and also by chewing betel nuts, drinking fragrant liquor, and so on. She then approached Lord Madhava with shy, playful smiles and soquitish glances. Soquitish means flirtish, in a flirting, basically. Yeah. So the purport's an interesting one by Hridaya Maharaj. It is clear from this verse that the ways a woman prepare for sexual enjoyment have not changed in thousands of years. I won't talk too much about that, but there is a point that I wanted to make here, and that is the difference between principles and details. So here, Maharaj is kind of saying, well, and men also prepare in their own way as well, right? But there are some differences. You don't, at least in the West, you don't see too many times for people chewing betel nuts or wearing garlands necessarily. But the idea of the attraction, wanting to make your body in such a way to attract others, that is something that goes on and has gone on and will go on in the material world. But the details of what is attractive, just like, not that we'll get into this, but the body types and the dress that people wear in different decades, even what to speak of different centuries, but different decades, changes according to what maybe what the fashion industry convinces us is attractive. So details change, principles remain the same. And it's important, and when we read the Shastra, to be able to make this distinction. In the 6th chapter of the Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada talks about this, that the principle is to accept the spiritual master. The details and how one spiritual master may be different than another spiritual master, those are details. So there are things in the Shastra that are more principles and some that are details. There's some things in the Shastra we don't follow. It's just a fact. For example, it says a vanaprastha should wear matted locks of hair on his head and let his body hair, nails, and mustache grow. He should not cleanse his body of dirt. He should keep a water pot, deer skin, and rod, wear the bark of a tree as a covering, and use garments colored like fire. So we don't follow that, right? we don't worship Ganesh as it says to do so in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. There's, I haven't, I'm kind of a Vanaprastha. My wife's in America. I'm here. But I haven't gotten really into the whole tree bark thing just yet. So those are details, but the principle of even of someone who's a Vanaprastha, there's some principles of that, not having more children, for example, etc. And when Prabhupada was once asked, how can you distinguish a principle from a detail? He said that takes some intelligence. Very interesting answer. So it is something that's just when we're starting to apply bhakti in our lives, it's such an important thing to consider. And often for me at least, I usually, if I'm not sure about what's the principle of detail, I usually talk to friends or talk to a senior devotee and through that conversation get a clear idea. But it can, a lot of the controversies in ISKCON are based on this or are caused by this. Is such and such a principle or is it a detail? Details have to be adjusted in order to be relevant. Principles should never be adjusted, otherwise, we kind of lose the lose the game. So it's an important thing. And somehow when I read this, just the little details, I thought, yeah, the details are different, but the principle of people making their body in such a way that attract others is probably going on since time immemorial. Any comments, questions, thoughts on that before we continue with the rest of the class?
Martin.
Hare Krishna.
So in the text, it says drinking fragrant liquor, and that kind of popped at me, considering that, liquor can be, it certainly relaxes you to a degree, right? But in this sense, is it meant to relax and then enhance the beauty, or just to kind of anticipation of what's coming? Because it's so not bhakti to drink liquor. So I just, that kind of jumped at my eyes in a way, and I just was wondering what's your take on it. Thank you.
Well, she actually wasn't a pure devotee until she had the touch of Krishna, right? Although she had done devotional service by offering the sandalwood paste, and that's if you know the pastime. So also she probably didn't have probably didn't have the four regulated principles back then. So things were different. This brings up a whole interesting topic, which I really want to get to the other part of the class today, but there's a concept called presentism. And presentism is when we take something that happened some time ago and look at it through the lens of our thought process today, right? I mean, the classic example is someone would say, well, how could, Thomas Jefferson, well, he was such a great person. He wrote all these things about, the equality of man, but he had slaves. And we're looking through the lens today. It may have been a very different way that he saw things and saw having slaves or whatever 200 years ago. I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm just saying we often will do that, and we do that with Shastra also, right? We hear something in Shastra we try to figure out how could we apply that in 2024, and we may look through the lens of someone would say, my God, Mother Yashoda would be kicked out of ISKCON for tying up a child. Right? She'd literally be kicked out of ISKCON for tying up a child. So that's a good example of presentism. So we have to be a little careful about that even when we're trying to figure out Varnashram. Oh my God, it's so different than especially what we grew up in the West with. and to try to understand how that was a wonderful system and how it created peace and collaboration. We try to do it, we go, how in the world are we going to figure this out, right? So that would be my long answer to a short question. Now, I do want to get going further, but Bhima Prabhu's, since we've offended him so much, we heard during the introduction, we better hear what he has to say.
Haribol.
Haribol,
Prabhu. Yes, very interesting topic. No one's ever offended me except myself offending myself. So everyone's forgiven except for me. Anyways, I was going to say to myself, I'm not going to say a thing, but I just can't help myself, is that we all have to understand in these pastimes particularly, and in the 10th canto, that this is Krishna. This is God. This is not our world. This isn't our Varnashram Dharma. Krishna married 108 or danced with 108 gopis. We don't do that either. Krishna chose betel nut. Lord Chaitanya chose betel nut. We don't do that. This is not. We're using Krishna's actions and Krishna's Leela as a model, or not we are, but some people are thinking that somehow what went on back there, that Krishna has to be righteous and Krishna has to be chaste, and Krishna doesn't have to be anything except what Krishna wants himself to be. And it's just crazy how we think that Krishna's Leela, Krishna just, the tailor, was it the tailor who said, you can't have these clothes. Those are Kamsa's clothes. And then Krishna just whacked him on the neck and cut his head off. We're not going to do that either. So we have to understand that there's a dichotomy between the transcendent actions of Krishna. He's a transcendental autocrat, right? He's an autocrat. He can do whatever he wants. It is we only, because we are subservient to the laws of material nature. We have to fall in line. We can't get drunk, because then we won't get up early to chant, or we might do something stupid. But Krishna can get drunk, and Balaram can get drunk. We just got to separate, the gold from the dross. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. There's a poet who said once that love means allowing the other person to be. And that's kind of what it is. We just say, Krishna, you're the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I ain't. And so I have to follow some rules. You can do as you want. At the same time, maybe we won't get into it, but anytime Krishna seems to do a so-called immoral activity, if you look at it carefully, it's always for a higher principle of loving his devotees, serving his devotees. Otherwise, when he's in Dwarka, he follows all the rules, better than we do. But in Vrindavan, if he's breaking the rules, it's only out of love for his devotees. But let's move on. And thank you for that. But do think about presentism in when we judge things in this world, and the difference between principles and details. It's really important stuff. Okay, so share my screen. Text number 6. Calling forward his beloved, who was anxious and shy at the prospect of this new contact, the Lord pulled her by her bangled hands unto the bed. Thus he enjoyed with that beautiful girl, whose only trace of piety was her having offered ointment, the sandalwood pulp, to the Lord. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti explains that the words Navasangama Priya indicates that Trivakra was in fact a virgin girl at this point. She had been a deformed hunchback, and the Lord had recently transformed her into a beautiful girl. Therefore, although clearly lusting after Sri Krishna, she was naturally shy and anxious. Translation. Simply by smelling the fragrance of Krishna's lotus feet, Trivakra cleansed away the burning lust Cupid had aroused in her breast, chest, and eyes. With her 2 arms, she embraced between her breasts her lover, Sri Krishna, the personification of bliss, and thus she gave up her long-standing distress. Having thus gotten the hard-to-get Supreme Lord by the simple act of offering him body ointment, unfortunate Trivakra submitted to that Lord of freedom the following request. Purport: according to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, Srimati Trivakra prayed to the Lord, quote, please enjoy only with me and not with any other women. Because Krishna was not prepared to grant such a benediction, Trivakra is described here as unfortunate. Sridhar Swami adds that although to ordinary eyes she seemed to beg for material sex pleasure, in fact, and here's an important point, she was a liberated soul at this point. Well, I guess I'll continue. So she says, oh, beloved, please stay here with me for a few days more and enjoy. I cannot bear to give up your association, O lotus-eyed one. Purport: the word ambu means water, and ruha means rising. Thus, amburuha means the lotus flower which rises up from the water. Lord Krishna is called Amburu Hikshana, the lotus-eyed one. He is the source and embodiment of all beauty, and naturally, Trivakra was attracted to him. However, the Lord's beauty is spiritual and pure, and his intention was not to gratify himself with Trivakra, but rather to bring her to the point of pure spiritual existence, Krishna consciousness. So this pastime should be really inspiring for us about how kind Krishna is. In the second canto, it says, Akama sarva kama va moksha karma udarati trivena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. That akama, if you approach Krishna with no material desires, just my only pleasure is your pleasure. Akama sarva kama va, or you have all kinds of material desires. Moksha kama, or you're attracted to the impersonal understanding and you just want liberation from this world. That's all you want from God, is to merge into his existence. Tivrena bhakti yogena. If you engage in bhakti, if we connect with Krishna, we become purified. So Trivakra Kubja, she had not the best, not the purest of all desires, but by coming in touch with Krishna, she was purified. And it all started by just a little something, offering sandalwood when he first entered, sandalwood paste when he first entered Dwarka, Mathura. And Krishna says this in the Gita. He says, Patram pushpam phalam toyam. If you offer me with, and he uses the singular word, if you offer me a leaf, he doesn't say a whole mountain of leaves. A leaf, a flower, a piece of fruit, some water. And the word bhakti is mentioned twice there. If you do that with devotion, asnami, Krishna says, I accept it. So this is, Krishna's so kind. He's unlimitedly kind. He's unlimitedly beautiful, as we see here. It was just mentioned. Although, I know what it's like, at least for myself, who's not in great consciousness all the time. When a person in class says, Krishna is unlimitedly beautiful, it doesn't really click to me completely, because we have to be spiritual to fully understand that spiritual beauty, or rather to the extent that we are full of bhakti, to that extent we can appreciate that beauty. It's so important to have this understanding of Krishna really deep in our psyche, that Krishna's kind. One name for him is Bhava Grahi Janardhan, that he takes the essence of our spiritual, of our desire, our spiritual consciousness, the essence of our intention. So even if we're like in abject Maya, just, thinking of the Rolling Stones all day and night, if we just say, okay, now I'm going to think of Krishna, and try to put some bhakti into that. Krishna's so kind to say, oh, Ananda Bihari was thinking of the Rolling Stones, but now he's thinking about me. Let me reciprocate with him. So understanding Krishna's kindness is a very important part of bhakti. Because otherwise we might think that we're abandoned by Krishna, but we're never abandoned by him. He's always there if we just turn to him. And as I heard this from Jiva Ji, and maybe it's a 12-step statement, but she said, God can move a mountain, but we have to bring a shovel. And I really liked that when she told me that. We have to do our part. And so when I was thinking about doing our part, I was thinking of, and I got to check the time here. Okay. I was thinking of a Krura. There's so many instructions on a Krura's trip from Mathura to Vrindavan. When Kamsa asked him to go fetch Krishna and Balaram, because Kamsa wanted to bring them to Mathura and to kill them, actually. Krura was able to he became Kamsa's servant. Kamsa's this really bad guy, right? And he became his servant for 12 years. He became his chief minister for 12 years, but constantly meditating that at some point I'm going to get the chance to be sent to be with Krishna. And that was his whole focus. I mean, he had other ideas because he was the only Yadava who actually became like buddies with Kamsa. The others hid primarily, but he took a different tactic. But he was so externally he was doing one thing. He was Kamsa's chief minister, but internally he was totally focused on Krishna. So once we may think sometimes we at work we have a terrible boss. He had a really terrible boss. And Lord Chaitanya told us, Rupa and Sanatan, that example that we know, most of us know about, the woman who's married but has a paramour, a lover on the side, but she does her household chores even better so that the husband doesn't have any suspicions, but she's constantly thinking of her lover. It's amazing that Lord Chaitanya, a strict sannyasi, uses that example because it's such a powerful example to Krishnaize it, to spiritualize it, that we may be in so many different situations. We find ourselves in situations often like a Krura, in places that are not so favorable for remembering Krishna. And yet the shovel, if we're talking about moving a mountain and bringing a shovel, our shovel is to have that internal consciousness on Krishna despite whatever external things are going on. And he had to be so careful. He was the first bridge preacher. Because what Kamsa told the day before Akrura went to Vrindavan to bring Balaram and Krishna back to Mathura, Kamsa told him his whole plan. Well, I got these two wrestlers, but actually they're murderers, and they might not even get a chance to kill Krishna because Kuvalayapita, this ferocious elephant, might stomp on them before they get there. He had explained his whole plan. And Akrura is a devotee, right? So Akrura wants to preach, but he has to be a little subtle. So all he says is, best thing is to be equal in success or failure. That was about as far as he could get. And Kamsa's whole idea, we know in sports, right? There's the concept of the home field advantage, right? It's always, if you're playing with your fans around you, you have an advantage. So Akrura just thought, Krishna and Balaram, they're not so great. It's just that all the demons that we sent to Vrindavan, and Krishna knows Vrindavan so well, so he had the home court advantage. If he comes to Mathura, forget about it. We'll take care of him. Right? But it's also explained that how did Akrura get this opportunity? Because while he was in Mathura and so-called serving Kamsa, he actually was always looking out for Devaki and Vasudeva. And they're great devotees, right? So he was always just, attending to their needs and protecting them from the worst parts of Kamsa. And by serving devotees, he had the opportunity to go fetch Krishna and Balaram. And as he was going, he was always thinking of Krishna. Matter of fact, we talked about principles and details, right? Like we say, following Ekadasi is important. But he messed up Ekadasi. It was Ekadasi when Kamsa told him to go. And he fasted that night and stayed up all night, but he broke his fast. He didn't break his fast at the right time because he was just so absorbed in Krishna. So that absorption in Krishna fully superseded following all these little rules and regulations. And he was so focused. He was really meditating on Krishna's lotus feet. We hear lotus feet, lotus feet, lotus feet, but actually, we are instructed to think of Krishna's lotus feet. It's not metaphorical. It's actually, we should think of Krishna's lotus feet. We should maybe have a picture of our favorite deities. We can look at the impressions, that you find on the internet, what's on the different symbols on Krishna's feet and Srimati Radharani's feet. Actually, we should meditate on lotus feet. Prabhupada often says it, but I know for myself, before I really kind of got into the Akura's pastime, it kind of went in one ear and out the other, but that's what Akura did. And when you think about it, it's said that the water vessel that Lord Brahma carries with him is Ganga Jal. And Lord Shiva, he has the whole Ganga coming on his head. Why? Because that's water that bathed the lotus feet of the Lord. And so he's meditating on these lotus feet, and he's meditating also on the effulgence from the toenails of Krishna. And so that's one reason the lotus feet are so important, because they dispel ignorance of the devotee by the brilliance emanating from the effulgence emanating from the lotus feet. Even Lakshmi Devi, she's not massaging Krishna's shoulders, right? She's not giving him a back rub. She's massaging his feet, right? So he's on the chariot. He doesn't even drive in the chariot seat because he doesn't want to kind of like contaminate the chariot. So he drives kind of in the middle. But he's focused. He's just meditating on Krishna as he's going to Vrindavan. So he's meditating on Vrindavan. He's meditating on Krishna's lotus feet. He's also thinking about his beautiful face and his eyes, and it's just a complete absorption. And let me just look at how are we doing time-wise, because okay, we have like 16 more minutes, right? I'll just mention one other thing. It's such a beautiful pastime. I encourage you to read the 38th chapter of the 10th canto. So one way that we can follow in Akura's footsteps is to always chant Kirtaniya Sadahari. If we're always chanting, we're always in touch with Krishna's lotus feet. And one last thing about, and then we'll talk, questions, answers, comments. Akura was sure that things were going to go right. At first, he had the humility of a devotee. Well, what have I done? I'm a useless person. I've been serving Kamsa. Krishna's not going to see me. But then he says, "Oh, forget that negative self-talk." Basically, is what he says. And he said, "No, Krishna's very kind." And then he sees the deer passing him on the right side, and that's a sign of good fortune. For women, it's the left side. For men, it's the right side. And I was thinking that, we may not be all the experts. Apparently, if your right eye twitches, if you're a man, that's auspicious. For women, if the left eye twitches, we may not be expert at all those things. But Krishna gives us signs. I think in different times in our life, and cluing into those, just as Akura clued into the signs of the deer, that can also be something that we practice. Anyway, there's so many. I've been studying a little bit about Akura's journey to Vrindavan. I wanted to kind of share my enthusiasm for what a powerful. There's so many powerful instructions there for us, and it's connected with these verses because Akura had been serving a lousy boss for so long. Kubja wasn't exactly the purest of pure people. But she made advancement by giving the sandalwood pulp. He made advancement by serving Vasudev and Devaki, and they both achieved perfection. Hare Krishna. So what questions, comments, thoughts?
Thank you, Vraj Vihari Prabhu. See, dear devotees, he got a verse about you in Bethel, preparing oneself for sexual enjoyment. And look what class he gave. Thank you, Vraj Vihari Prabhu. Wonderful class, nectar. Okay, dear devotees, it's your turn. Srimad Bhagavatam is questions and answers. And we have Bhima Prabhu.
Yes, Bhima Prabhu.
Haribol, Raja. Prabhuji. Could you please clarify the distinction between transcendent intimacy that is shared between even Krishna and Trivarka or Kubja? The idea that, first of all, what Krishna, or what we've been told that the divine is attracted to in the jiva, is the virtue, is the humility, is the love. It's not necessarily our form. Krishna could care less about our form, but our form, we're born into this life. What we look like is a result of our karma, our righteous deeds. If you're beautiful, then you must have done something beautiful in your past life, etc., etc. So similarly, we have this idea that somehow Krishna is operating on, this is the confusion. This is why we don't go into the 10th canto and read these pastimes when we're neophytes, like myself, is because we get mixed up. We think that the world that we're reading about is a reflection of our world, rather than our world being a perverted reflection of Krishna's world. Could you clarify that for those of us online who become dazed and confused as in regards to the difference between that which is sublime and manifest in Krishna's Leela, and that which is in this world, which is of another sort?
You did a pretty good job just now. Yeah, well, one's a perverted reflection of the other. Kubja and Krishna did not enjoy on the material level. Krishna made her a pure devotee. And then they had, a spiritual exchange like Krishna has with the gopis. But if you read the Nectar of Devotion, there's a whole discussion about Kubja and how she's certainly not on the level of the Brijbasi gopis. But she became, and as we heard in the purport, and I wanted to emphasize that Krishna was only purpose and going there was to purify her of her material desires. So it's the great thing about hearing the 10th canto from Srila Prabhupada in the Krishna book is that he presents it in such a way that you can't forget who you're dealing with. And in fact, the whole 9 cantos lead us to the 10th canto so that when we read it, we're not just reading some cute stories, because on one level they can be kind of cute stories. But there's so much depth. Every chapter of the Bhagavatam in the 10th canto, there's so much depth, and the depth is in the relationship of love between Krishna and his devotees. The Govardhan Leela and that whole pastime and how, that just as an example, the Govardhan and the Kaliya Leela are the only 2 times the gopis are allowed to just gaze directly at Krishna. All the other times they have to do sidelong glances, right, because of society. But Krishna is there in the middle holding up the hill so they can all just like soak it in. And similarly, Krishna's dancing on Kaliya and they're at the bank of the Jamuna. So it's just a whole nother realm of love. And we just try best we can to appreciate what selflessness. Mother Yashoda would rather die 100 times than Krishna to have 1 drop of perspiration. I mean, her love is so intense And we can appreciate it generally by associating with devotees who have a deeper appreciation than us. But really, you know, the 10th canto is just a love fest. And I think one of the best ways to read the 10th canto is always be aware of the relationships and look at the relationships. And the same thing with Chaitanya Charitamrita. Of course, there's all the philosophy, and that's super, super, super important. But also look at the way Lord Chaitanya deals with the different devotees and the subtleties of their relationship. You know, parokribad means, you know, indirect, and a lot of and Krishna says the indirect loving exchanges are more dear to him than the direct ones. And Prabhupada was also expert at this. One story I think I've told before, but it just to show you about the indirect. Burijan Prabhu had brought Prabhupada a ring that said Jai Iskon. There's a whole story behind why he said that, but anyway. And so Hari Sari Prabhu was massaging Prabhupada. Burijan Prabhu's in the room, and Hari Sari Prabhu sees the ring and said, "Oh, Prabhupada, that's a new ring. Who gave that to you?" And Prabhupada just looks at Burijan Prabhu in the eyes and just says, "Oh, someone." You know, such a subtle exchange of love, a little like secret between him and Burijan Prabhu, right? So there's an expertise that's really there in the relationship between Krishna and the residents of Vrindavan, and Lord Chaitanya and his relationships. Jumana Jaya Ji.
Hare Krishna, Vihari, thank you so much for class. I just wanted to say, I too, this last time when we were reading through the Akrura pastimes and looking at his prayers, I just really got such a deeper understanding and such a admiration, because I always secretly wondered, why is he the exemplar of prayers when we have so many others? Why isn't Queen Kunti? And then I realized exactly what you were saying, that, you know, and what I love about his prayers when he's in the chariot approaching, and that faith, and he talks about the affirmative, who talks about Krishna, and he will do this and he will do that, and the fact that Akrura never lost faith no matter what, that Akrura always knew that Krishna, he sees me serving this evil guy, but he knows, and that's the section I love when he goes, and he will do this and he will do that, that firm faith. And that for me has really made those prayers come alive this year for me. So thank you for bringing it up, because I really so much resonate more with those prayers now than I ever did before.
Well, thank you for saying that, Jumanajaya, because, you know, so he's not just meditating on Krishna, but he's meditating on the loving exchange that they're going to share when they meet. And he says, Krishna is going to extend his lotus hand to me, right? And so it's all about relationship. It's all about exchanges of love. It's beyond meditation, but it goes to, yes, and then he's going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and Balaram's going to do this. It's really all about exchanges. Now, you know, Akrura, he got cursed by the gopis. We may know that because when he was taking Krishna and Balaram away, and the gopis were just stunned. They were very upset at Nanda Maharaj and others, because Nanda Maharaj and the other coward men, they were thinking, they'll be back. Krishna will be back in 2 or 3 days. We'll bring him back, because they went to Mathura. And the gopis understood, now this is long term. And they weren't upset with Akrura taking them away. They were upset that Akrura didn't try to pacify them. And because of that, it says he had to live in Varanasi or Benares for a little while, which isn't like the coolest city in the world. It's kind of impersonal. But his, and that's of course Leela and everything, but his meditation and his focus, and also the lessons that we can learn from him, I think is really what makes this pastime special in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Thank you, Vraj Vihari Prabhu. Does anyone in the temple room have a question? Adipusha Prabhu. Was that Janitai Prabhu on the chair?
Oh yeah, Janitai is in the Bhakti Center. Yeah.
Janitai Prabhu, Adipusha Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, loud and as if you're in Vrindavan.
Srila Prabhupada tells us that the mind is a thing unto itself, and can make a heaven of hell or a hell of heaven. Two people in the same room might be, like Bhima was saying, there's a transcendental consciousness and another type of consciousness. So two people might do what appears to be the same thing, but their intention, their motivation behind what they're doing. This girl is decorating herself. It says something about how she's hoping Krishna will be attracted to her. And there's an element of trying to please the Lord and not just let myself be glorified, but sometimes a girl will dress herself for the pleasure of her husband, for the pleasure. Gopis dressed himself very beautifully to please Krishna. And so a person might do it out of vanity, or they might do it out of devotional service. And based on our motivation, we get a different result, right?
Yeah. It's a nice point. On a practical level, bringing that down from the high level that you're speaking about, Adipurush Prabhu, it's important in our relationships to make sure that our intention matches our impact. But they say the road to hell is paved by good intentions. It's really important to have good intentions on Yabilashita Sunyam, to have pure intentions. It's also important to be able to communicate those, because it's so easy in Kali Yuga to misinterpret what a person does. Just like Parikshit Maharaj misinterpreted Samak Rishi, or Parvati misinterpreted Chitraketu, or the residents of Dwarka, they thought that Krishna had killed Prasenna to get the Shamantaka jewel. So it's also important to clarify our intentions sometimes. I was just bringing it down to like about communications. It's important. And I think our time is up.
It's 59. Jaini Thai Prabhu, would you like to speak? Would you like to say something? Hare Krishna.
Just wanted to say, wonderful to hear from you, Vraj Bihari Prabhu. Nice to see you in Vrindavan. Sorry I missed our meeting yesterday. And
yeah, you missed the meeting.
Sorry about
what
that.
What a guy.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. You're so lucky to be there in New York.
I feel blessed and blessed to be with you while you're in Vrindavan. Wonderful class. Thank you for reminding us of the prayers of Akur Prabhu. I'm going to look those up later.
Okay. All right. Vanchakalpa Turubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna, everyone.
Vraj Bihari Prabhu, you should get yourself a tree bark hat.
Yes. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you. Okay, it's darshan time. Dear devotees, we're going to be seen by the Lord. How wonderful is that? Please stand up. Put on your best look. Jeffrey Eckler is here. Oh, better late than never, Jeffrey Eckler. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Okay, Venetia, Amrita Kishori, Didi. Is that Pujari room, Amrita Kishori? No, I see a duck. No, it's not.
No, it's a house in DC.
Every room Amrita Kishori walks in turns into Pujari room because of her devotion. Yeah, Venetia approves that message. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's we'll have to hear with our eyes. Jai Shri Shri Radha Murlidhar Shigur Chandra Ki Jai. All the devotees on this call Ki Jai. Mutant Ki Jai. Okay. Any final reflections? Jeff Reckler Prabhu, would you like to be the finisher today? Please instruct us.
Good morning and Hare Krishna. Thank you for recognizing me. It's Saturday for me, and I have a lot to do today, so I'm glad to start it with the strength that you all give me. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff Reckler Prabhu. Thank you. We love you. Okay, have a wonderful day, everybody. Do what you need to do. Do it for Krishna. Do it for Krishna. And we love you. We need your association on a daily basis. Hare Krishna.